Good morning again, and welcome to the session on transportation management targeted to the inbound coordinators in the missions. So, as you may know, the go live for the transportation management module is next Monday, 21st of January, and even though the main users of these implementations, the one that will be doing most of the transactions in the system, will be based in HQ. There are still a few steps that you as an inbound coordinator will have to be aware of. Okay, so we will be showing to you in this presentation the changes because of the implementation of this new module in Umoja. And we will also do a demo in the system to show to you how that is reflected in the system in Umoja. Okay. We are around 23 people, so I'm not sure if you will be able to unmute yourself, but for sure you can make use of the chat, and in case you want to speak up, just use the hand button you have available, just to let me know that you want to talk, and I will unmute your microphone so that you can talk. Okay, and all right. So we are also recording this session in case you want to share it with other colleagues, or in case you want to revisit any of the concepts we will describe during this session. Okay. All right. So let's start. I hope that you can see my screen. So right now I'm sharing my screen, the presentation. Okay, so let's start by having a look at the end-to-end process. Okay, for this implementation, as we said. With this implementation starting from 21st January, and you have a lot of information in the umoja.un.org DFS website, by basically we will be managing the transportation for several commodities, like for example, all the COE equipment that will be sent to the missions, either with the LOA or non-LOA, will be managed as we are going to show in this presentation. Also, the transportation of the troops, okay, to the missions will also make use of this end-to-end process. So basically, COE, troops, and then the equipment, the items purchased by UN, what we refer to the UNOE, right? The UN-owned equipment. Starting from next Monday, we will be managing in the transportation management module only the vehicles. So only purchasing group vehicles will be managed using this transportation management module. All the other commodities purchased by UN will still be following the same process as we have right now, okay, without the new features for transportation management. Okay, so starting from Monday, we will be managing COE, the transportation of contingent on equipment, the transportation of troops, and the transportation of vehicles, okay, when we talk about UNOE. All right. All right. Okay, so let's start by having a look at the end-to-end process. So in here, in this slide, is where we are going to be reviewing the different phases of the end-to-end process, and you will see that we have different phases that are already in the system, and we will talk about the difference. Okay, so for example, when we talk about the UNOE scenario, okay, that we said that starting from January we will only be managing vehicles with this new module. Everything starts with the procurement, right? So everything starts, as you know, in SRM with the shopping cart that needs to be created and approved, and then with the purchase order. Okay, so specifically for vehicles, shopping carts are raised by a section in HQ, so it's not even done by the missions, and that's why we are not involving that much the requisitions in the missions, because the only UNOE commodity that we will be incorporating in the system will be vehicles. that are directly purchased by the surface transport section in HQ. Okay, but everything starts with the shopping cart. Then once the PO is approved, is when we have the inbound delivery created automatically by the system, and when we can do packing. Okay, and the packing functionality in the case of UNOE for vehicles, the packing functionality will be used to indicate weights and volumes of the vehicles that needs to be transported. So for phase 1, so starting from next Monday, you don't need to worry about doing packing for vehicles, because even that will be done by the surface transport section in HQ. But they will be using the inbound delivery to specify the weights and volumes of the vehicles that will be sent to the transportation management module. Okay, but in later phases of this project, once we start incorporating not only vehicles but other commodities, you might be using in the future the packing functionality in the inbound delivery to specify the weights and volumes of the different items. Okay. The project team is also looking at incorporating other more automated ways of populating weights and volumes, and they are trying to integrate with the manufacturer systems to automatically read weights and volumes from the manufacturer's systems. And this is what they mention as the EDI integration, okay, electronic data interchange, to avoid having to manually indicate weight and volume in the inbound delivery, and to have those weights and volumes automatically populated from the manufacturer systems. Okay, so far there is no action that you'll need to do, okay, starting from next Monday, but it's just for your knowledge, okay, for you to understand what's going to be implemented next week. Once we have the inbound delivery created and the weight and volume populated by using the packing functionality, it's when we have the first integration with the new Umoja module. That is, the new Umoja module is called TM, is called Transportation Management Module. So we are used to SRM ECC. We are implementing a new Umoja module that we name it, or we can call it TM, Transportation Management Module, and we have different document types. For example, in SRM, we have shopping carts or POs, and in ECC, we usually talk about the inbound deliveries. In TM module, we have other documents, like here we have the DTR, that is the delivery-based transportation requirement, that is automatically created in the new module once we have the inbound delivery created in ECC. So after the inbound delivery is created in ECC, the system, Umoja, will automatically create two different documents in TM. The DTR, the delivery-based transportation requirement, and the freight unit. Okay, so DTR will be like a copy of the inbound delivery in TM, and the freight unit will be like the different items that need to be shipped from origin to destination. Remember that in the shopping cart, we specify the vendor, and we specify, or the requisition, we specify the final destination, right? The mission that will be receiving the vehicles in stock. Okay, so we can see that there is an integration from the SRM ECC up to the new module, that is the transportation management module. And this process that we have shown in the first column, the procure phase, remember that it applies to the UNOE, and basically we are talking about vehicles for this phase 1. What if we are talking about COE and troops? So if we are talking about transporting contingent owned equipment or a set of troops, instead of this procurement stage, we will upload into the system the equipment or the troops that we are about to request transportation for by doing an Excel upload, by using a load list. This process is managed directly by MoveCon in HQ. So you as MoveCon in the missions is just for your reference. So this upload process will be managed from MoveCon HQ. Okay, so basically they will be using the cargo list or the passenger manifest coming from the memorandum of understanding, okay, signed between the troops contributing country and the UN, in order to populate what they call the Excel load list. Okay, so this Excel load list containing the list of equipments, that needs to be transported, or the passengers and related baggage that we need to transport, will be populated in an Excel file and afterwards uploaded directly into this new module, into the transportation and management module. Okay, so by doing the upload, the documents that will be created in the system for COA and troops, so instead of a DTR, the name of this document in the system will be the forwarding order, the FWO. That will be the name of the document in the system, the name of the document in TM that is used for COE and troop scenario. Okay, and together with the forwarding order, the system will create the freight unit. So freight unit applies both for UNOE and COE troop scenarios, but for UNOE we have the DTR, that is a kind of copy of the inbound delivery in ECC, and for COE and troops, instead of a DTR, we have this forwarding order, that is the document in the system that is created after the upload. Okay. Nothing for inbound coordinators in the missions to do, but that will be the start point, okay, for all the different items reaching the mission. Okay. Once we have the freight units created, that are kind of the items that we need to transport from the manufacturer to the missions, or from the troops contributing country up to the missions, then we will start the transportation planning phase. So this plan phase, it relates to the transportation management phase. So in the transportation management phase, we have two different parts. So one part relates to, in the case of a UNOE, directly the goods vendor being responsible for the transportation, okay? Or in the case of COE and troops, the troops contributing country being responsible for the transportation. So, for example, if you are talking about MOU with a letter of assist being LOA, instead of UN transporting the items, it will be the TCC, right? The troops contributing country responsible for that. Same thing applies for UNOE. Depending on the Incoterm, it will be either the goods vendor or the UN responsibility for the transportation. So we can have the UN transporting or the goods vendor or TCC. So in the left, we can see this part will be the goods vendor or TCC doing the transportation. And the second part will be when the UN is responsible for the transportation, and UN will finally delegate or award that transportation to a freight forwarder so that they can perform the transportation. And it applies to different Incoterms for UNOE, or for COE and troops for the non-LOA scenario. Okay. So where do you have to? You will not do planning as inbound coordinators. Okay, that will be also managed directly from HQ. So planning in the end will be responsibility of the team in HQ, and they will be creating another type of document in the system that is called the freight orders. Okay, so freight orders are the documents in TM that reflect the different legs in the transportation. Okay, so if we have different legs, let's say, for example, to transport the vehicles, okay, each leg will be represented in TM by a different freight order, and freight orders can have different transportation modes. So one leg could be delivered using a truck, another one via air, okay, and others, for example, could be using a vessel, okay, to do the transportation. So for the part that the goods vendor, the TCC, is responsible for, planning will be happening automatically, meaning that the FOs will be created automatically by the system. And for the stage that UN is responsible for, the transportation planner will have to manually select the best transportation proposal to create the freight orders manually. Okay, but what you will have at this stage, I mean, you will not do this planning, but you need to understand that the freight order document in TM is the one reflecting the different legs in the system from the different, if there is a different stopover or different transportation means used, you'll have different freight orders created for the same shipment. So freight unit are the transportation requirements from source to destination. Let's say, for example, from the manufacturer up to the mission. And then depending on the route, there will be, for each freight unit, there will be one or more freight orders, depending on if you need to do pre-carriage using a truck, then maybe you'll do the main carriage via vessel, and so on. And these freight orders are the ones that will be used later on to perform tracking, to understand where the shipment, or what's the status of that particular shipment. Okay. Freight orders will also allow to automatically generate the statement of work. Statement of work, this document that will be used as an input to the next stage, that is the stage in which we will procure, the UN will procure the freight and will award the transportation to a particular freight forwarder. Okay, so the statement of work is used as an input to finally award the transportation in the case of FCA or X-Works Incoterm for UNOE, or non-LOA for COE and troops. So the transportation can be awarded to a particular freight forwarder, and the process to do that is the same one we have right now in SRM. So there will be shopping cart for freight, solicitation, and once we have the awarded freight forwarder, procurement division in New York will create the freight PO to award that particular shipment to a freight forwarder. Okay. Once we have the awarded freight forwarder, also procurement division in New York, the ones dealing with freight forwarders, will indicate in TM who has been the assigned freight forwarder, also called carrier in TM, and they will even reference the freight PO, and they will do that by updating the freight order, that is the one specifying which is the different legs and the and that is actually used to generate the statement of work. Okay. So all this, from procurement or from the Excel upload list up to the procurement of freight, is something that we have explained to you, not because you have to do it, but because we want you to understand what will be done basically by HQ starting from next Monday. But your role as inbound coordinator in the mission will start once the freight orders are created, and even afterwards, even after the freight forwarder has been awarded. So your role as an inbound coordinator will be basically important in the phase we are about to explain right now, in the execution and monitoring phase. Okay. So in the execution and monitoring phase is where the UN will be using the system to monitor what's the status of the different shipments. Meaning that, so we will have external partners. We will have external partners using another system that is also being implemented right now that we call as the Carrier Collaboration Portal, this CCP. This CCP will be, or is going to be a new system available for external partners. And when we talk about external partners, are goods vendors like manufacturers, meaning Nissan, Toyota. So this goods vendor will have access to this new system, to the Carrier Collaboration Portal, to submit events, attachments, and notes. Okay. Same thing applies for freight forwarders. So freight forwarders, they will be able to connect also to the Carrier Collaboration Portal to submit events and attachments related to their freight orders. So let's say that we have procured some vehicles with a Nissan manufacturer. They are the ones responsible for part of the shipment, so Nissan will be able to connect and submit events and attachments. Okay, and you as an inbound coordinator, you'll have access to TM to see all the events and attachments submitted by external partners, both goods vendor and freight forwarders. So you will be able to see all the attachments and events submitted, and if needed, you will be also able to submit or update events and upload your own attachments. Okay, so in here is where you can see you can track the status of your shipment. Okay, all right. So your role will be basically be in the execution and monitoring phase of this end-to-end process. Okay, so we just went through from beginning to end just to provide you with an overview of what's the process. Okay, and we will be doing a demo just to show to you how basically the part of the execution and monitoring will be done in the system. So we will be showing to you how you can see or how you can find freight orders in TM, how you can submit events, view events, and the same thing for attachments and notes. Okay, but before we move to the demo, let's see if we have any question, comment before we move ahead. Okay. All right. So I see the question from Kiran. I think you cannot see it, Brian, because I think it sends to the host. So if you have questions or any comments in the chat, just make sure you select all panelists in the recipients. Okay, so that also Brian can see it. Okay, thank you, Kiran. Okay, so Kiran's question is about shopping carts. And the question is about if the shopping carts are done at mission level and POs in HQ. Okay, basically, you're right. So shopping carts are done at mission level, but except for vehicles. So vehicles, the shopping carts for vehicles are raised by STS, by the Surface Transport Section in HQ. So not even the shopping carts are raised, and they used a different system to understand the needs of the different missions in terms of vehicles. But the shopping carts in Umoja are raised directly by HQ, but only for vehicles that we are talking about right now. Okay, all the rest is the missions. But remember that for the only UNOE, the only UN-owned equipment that will be linked to TM in this first phase of the implementation are going to be vehicles. Any other question before we move ahead? All right. Okay, so I think it's gonna be easier once you start seeing the system. So let's have a look at the roles. Okay, so in here you have the different roles. So basically, this one will be the planners, the one doing most of the process. That will be granted to HQ. Okay, your role will be the TS02. So as an inbound coordinator, you will be given this new role that will allow you to access TM in order basically to review and submit events. Okay, so you as an inbound coordinator, you will be granted this TS02 freight order management role. Okay, then in here you have the other roles that are new in the system, but basically yours is going to be the 02. Okay, 05 will be the one granted to external partners to access the carrier collaboration portal. Okay, so manufacturers and freight forwarders will have TS05 role to have access to the carrier collaboration portal and be able to submit events and attachments. And then they are also building some reports in BI that are not ready yet, and I'm sure that you will have also access to those BI reports, and the role to access those BI reports will be the TS07 that will give you access to those specific reports in BI. Okay, so in here you have an explanation of the new roles in TM and CCP, and we just put it here some screenshots for your reference of the main actions you'll perform in the system. We are going to go through them fast because I think it's going to be clearer once we do it using the demo, once we connect into the system. But basically, your main actions will be first to search for the freight orders that you want to review events, attachments, or even submit your own, maybe on behalf of freight forwarders, or because you want to follow up about the status of a particular freight order. So there will be some reports in TM, like for example, the overview freight orders, by which you will be able to, so that's the look and feel of the TM module. So it's pretty much very similar to SRM. So it's more similar to SRM than to ECC. It's not T-code based. It's more like in SRM where you use the menu and the different options available. So you have the overview freight orders where you have different filter criteria available. If you want to change or you want to have more filtering criteria, you can use the change query. So the change query link will provide you with more filtering criteria that are relevant for the different scenarios. Like for example, if it's a UNOE scenario, you will be able to filter, for example, by related goods PO or by inbound delivery. So you have your own inbound delivery, you can filter all the related freight orders. And if we are in a COE or troop scenario, we will be able to filter, for example, by MOU number or by forwarding order number. That is the kind of DTR for COE and troops. Okay, so best way will be to show it in the demo, and also the idea is that after the WebEx session, we will share this presentation, the recorded video of the session, and we will also provide you with some credentials and exercises so that you can log in and have them available in case you want to practice in the training environment. Okay. I heard a beep, so maybe we have. Okay. All right. So Sammy, you raised your hand, but I cannot see your headset, so I cannot unmute you. I don't know if you have, maybe you can make use of the chat. Okay, so if you want to ask a question, comment, because I don't think you have the headsets or microphone available. I cannot unmute you. All right, so yeah, yes. Titael. So Titael, I'm gonna mute you in case you want to speak. Okay, give me a second. All right, Titael. So you are now muted. I think we can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Now in the first screen, sorry to go back to the first screen. You did
Yeah.
mention that the processes are done in New York, which is fully acceptable. But my point here is, do you have any timeline for each processes, or is it just like that? It has happens then the machines are getting to know about it, because there should be some timeline for each processes. Do you record those processes? And secondly, I have a question: is this process what you mentioned? Is it freely accessible for everybody, or is it only for exclusive for certain machines for their particular shipments? Because you said about the troop movements, you said that MoveCon in New York is going to do. I was been, because I am in RSC in Antibes, I've been in the achievement that aviation is going to take over the troop movements, but a little bit of confusion whether it's a MoveCon or aviation is going to take over. So please, maybe we have to get back offline. You can check and let us know. Thank you. I'm the screenshot.
Okay, thank you, Titael. So I think you can mute yourself, and
Yep.
you want to do a follow-up question, you can do it from by unmuting yourself. So totally understood your first point about the this end-to-end process. What we let me see if I can put it again. The poster. 1 second. Okay. Okay. So this process will be the one used for COE troops and UNOE. Okay. So this process. Sorry, but I cannot put it again. I think I'm gonna use it without the animation. So okay. All right. So basically, that's going to be managed from HQ from beginning to end up to the execution and monitoring. Okay, and then the role, at least for this first phase of the missions, will be to perform the execution and monitoring. Okay, so I didn't get if your question was more about the timeline for the training or the implementation, that it should have been done earlier, or about when the different contingent equipment troops will be triggered in the system. Okay. So Tita, you were referring to the timeline of the different activities before the implementation, or?
Yes, before the implementation, if you are saying that procurement is being creating shopping cart, because we have an experience on what we did here with the East African corridor. We were one of those people who were deeply involved in these transportations. But having said that, we have so much of up and down with the shopping cart and the processes. So if the processes are timely informed by the missions, it helps them out to do the execution. Because of late, most of the times, what happens is when you get this DAP coming in, if for a surprise, it will come to the mission without unknowingly. So we need to know how soon those information comes. Some of the missions may require to give exemption letters. A lot of other documents which is allowed, is required, should be also in the process, so that if each process being timely captured, it helps the mission to execute and monitor. That's what my point was.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, so we don't have, I mean, we don't have any other details on, I mean, further information that we can provide to you. But at least the main idea today is that you understand how this new system is going to work, and then we can work together with HQ to see how we can improve, right, the communications, so that you in the missions know more in advance when the different equipment or troops will reach the mission, so that you have more time to prepare all the activities you have to perform in the missions.
Yeah, Leandro, I'll just jump in there for a second. Yeah, yesterday during the WebEx with PD Goods, they were also mentioning that, and I believe the attendee is really hitting on this topic where if it's a DAP scenario, most of the times they don't really know where the shipment is until it's right at their door. And I believe, if I understand, part of the question is also like, will they be able to know or track the shipment even if it's a DAP scenario? In the case that the vendors are supposed to submit events through CCP, you would be able to simply monitor this. Now, if they don't, in the majority of the cases, according to the guys in the PD Goods in HQ, they usually wouldn't, or they only communicate by email, and you would only be able to be tracking that by email. So yes, like Leandro's saying, there's really no further info besides that, but it definitely we're also creating video tutorials, and we're in contact with the vendors that are supposed to be using CCP. So in the best case scenario, they should actually be submitting these events even for the AP scenario. So you should be able to monitor and track all the shipments nonetheless.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Brian. Right now we were referring basically to the DAP, right? But if I'm not mistaken, at least for UNOE, it's going to be working with the FCA Incoterm. At least the ones when we were there in New York, they were saying that all vehicles are purchased with the FCA Incoterm, so we should be having the freight forwarders. But I mean, we can elaborate more on that once we are doing the demo, and you will see how the goods vendor and also the freight forwarders will be able to submit events, and you as an inbound coordinator, you will have access to see which are the events and documentation provided by the goods vendors and freight forwarders. Okay. All right, so let's continue. I think we were at this stage. All right, let me continue with the presentation. Okay, so we said that you as an inbound coordinator, you will be able to look for the related freight orders, and you'll have some reports in TM to do that, to report on the different freight orders. Once you find the freight order you want to check on the status, you will see that in the freight order, the information is organized in different tabs. So some tabs will be basically for your reference, for you to understand what type of shipment, which is the leg that we are displaying in the system. So you can see that on the top part, you have different tabs, and even some of them are hidden, okay, in a way that different tabs are available and with different information. So that's how a freight order, it's displayed in TM. And in bold, you have the tab that is active in that particular screen. Not even that, so additional tabs can be displayed, and even by clicking on the personalization dialog box. So this personalization dialog box that appears at the top, you will be able to even display some more tabs that are not displayed by default in the freight order. Okay, so by clicking on the Open Personalization dialog box, you'll reach a different screen in which you can add, for example, you can click on Add and select and make some other tabs visible in your freight order. Okay. So we will do all that in the demo. So in here you have the screenshots for your reference, and you can even use that personalization functionality to change how the freight order, how the different tabs are displayed or are displayed in the freight order. So in here you can use the arrows, okay, to change the order, and also to create what is called in TM the stack. Okay, so each stack in a freight order or in a TM screen is shown in a different section, meaning that, for example, in this particular layout we have two different stacks, first and second, and that means that in our screen we will have stack number 1 at the top and stack number 2 at the bottom. In stack number 1, we will have the output management, map, and document references, and that's why we can see these three tabs in the top part, and in the second stack is where we have placed the document flow. That's why we can always see the document flow at the bottom, even though if we change from output management to map tab, the document flow will always remain visible in the screen. Okay. So you will get familiar with that once you start using the system, but here you have it for your reference. Okay, so in the freight order, we have put here the most important tabs. So there is a tab in the freight order that is called General Data, where you can see the document type, the means of transportation, source, and destination for that particular leg. There is another tab that is called Business Partner, where you will be able to see who is the shipper, so who is playing the source, consignee, that will be basically the mission, and then the carrier. In the case of, for example, FCA, we will see the freight forwarder as carrier in the Business Partner tab. In the Items tab, you can see a description of the different items that we are transporting. So cargo and troops with the quantities, weights, and volumes. In the document flow, we have the different references to all the other related documents, like DTRs, freight units, and for COE, the forwarding orders and the freight units for COE and troops. You have Statuses tab showing the status of the freight order, and the most important status is what is called the execution status, that basically triggers or defines if the freight order is visible in CCP to allow event submission. So if the status, the execution status, is ready for transportation execution or in execution, it will allow event submission in CCP. There is also a document references tab that is by default hidden, but you can make it visible, where you can see the related goods PO, and also if applies, the related freight PO. And then there are three different tabs that you will be using most to review and submit your own events, notes, and attachments. And these three tabs are the ones that you will be using to see whatever has been submitted by the external partners, and whatever you want to include in the freight order that is also visible by external partners in CCP. So these three tabs, execution, notes, and attachments, are the ones you're going to be using most. So all the previous ones are basically for reference to understand what's the shipment we are looking at. Okay. In here, you can see how to submit events. So events, there are some that are expected, and here you can see how to submit events. So in the execution tab, you will submit the event. You will select the event you want to submit, indicate the date and the time, and report that event. Okay. For unexpected, everything that is not planned, like for example damage, delay, and so on, can also be reported by clicking on Insert Event. By clicking on Insert Event, you will be able to see that there is a different icon that indicates that the event is an unexpected one, and you will be able to select the type of unexpected event, like for example damage, delay, and so on. In here you will be able to select the type of unexpected event. Attachments. You do that in the Attachments tab and clicking on the File option. Okay, attachments submitted by external partners are also visible there, and you have one field that is the visibility type that allows you to, if you are uploading an attachment in TM, and if you select external, the attachment will become visible in CCP. If you select internal, you will still see the attachment in TM, but will not be visible in CCP. Okay. So you select the attachment type, click on next, and find your file in the computer, and click on OK. These are the steps to submit an attachment. And lastly, we will do that for the notes. So notes are a way to communicate with the external partners if you want to follow up on a particular shipment or on a particular event of that shipment. You can do that in the Notes tab, and you will do so by clicking on the Insert, select the appropriate text type, and indicating your note in the content. And by clicking on Save, your note, your comment will also become visible in CCP by external partners. Okay. All right. This is the last screen. The acronyms, because we have been using the different acronyms throughout this presentation, and here you have them for your reference. So FO, FWO, the different type of documents that are new in this process. And that was basically the presentation. We didn't want to spend the whole session only on the slides, because we think that the most important part would be the demo, where we will be showing to you what we just explained by dialing in the system. So before I give the floor to my colleague Brian, we will be doing the demo together. So Brian will be basically playing the role of the inbound coordinator in the mission. So he will connect to TM to look for freight orders and see the related events, attachments, and notes. And I will be playing the role of the external partner to use the Carrier Collaboration Portal and submit events, attachments, and so on. So I think Baku comment in the chat is related to that. So he's asking about a live demo. So that's what we are about to do. So let me give the floor to Brian. So I'm gonna make you the presenter so that you can share TM. Okay, so now I'm gonna change the role to Brian. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Leandro. I believe it's working now, so I should just share my screen as well, because I believe no one can see that. And we're back. Can you just confirm you can see my screen too? Okay, so welcome everyone. So as Leandro clearly explained, right now I would be I would be logging into TM as what you're supposed to do as an inbound coordinator with this particular role, in order to monitor in the events that we have to are either submitted by vendors, freight forwarders, or if we have to submit them on their behalf. So this is what the main screen would look like, and we're going to be switching back and forth. So every time I'm the one presenting, I'm going to be in TM, monitoring and submitting events as an inbound coordinator in the mission, while Leandro will be logging in as a vendor or freight forwarder in CCP. So the initial screen will look like the one that you have now on screen. You guys should all be able to see what I'm seeing, which is TM. And the Home tab, if you realize we have another 3 tabs at the top. And the one that we're going to be focusing on right now would be the Freight Order Management tab. And let's click on that one so you see what that looks like. So what are we doing here? Exactly that. Searching for freight orders. And this page will display a number of hyperlinks, as we see here, a total of 4, and have one first link called Overview Freight Orders, where we would be able to search For our freight orders, if we don't have, let's say, the freight order number, but we do have other details, like for example, the PO number or the inbound delivery number, this would be the link that we want to follow in order to search for our freight orders. If we just want to simply add our freight order number, could you just mute your mic? Because I hear my echo and it's a bit distracting. Thanks.
Yes, sorry, Brian.
No problem. Okay, there you go. Thank you. And so let's say that now we have our freight order number and we just want to search for that one. If we click on display freight order here, the window will load now with a simple search box for freight order. So we basically would just have to write our freight order number here. Let's say that we know it and I'm just going to type it in. For example, it would start with 61 followed by 3 zeros, 27517. For example, that would be my freight order number. I know it already. I know that's the one I'm submitting events for. So I just want to go directly to this one. I would click on continue, and eventually TM will take me to that freight order exactly. Now, we're going to get into this little by little, but first I want to go through how to search for our FOs in TM. That's the first part of this demo in the system. So we just learned how to search for our freight order if we know the number and we clearly just want to type that number in and go directly to it. Now, every time you load a page in TM, a new window will display. So eventually you could end up with 20 windows open and be quite confused as to what you're looking at. So always pay attention at the header at the top left, which will tell you what you are looking at currently. This is the display UNOE vendor delivered freight order and the number here. So it gives us quite a lot of information, and we'll get into that in a bit. But now if I just wanted to go back to my initial window, the one where I had the 3 tabs in, I would simply just close this one and we're back to our initial window. Now what we did was click on display freight order and just simply type in our freight order number into the search box. Now we're going to click on overview freight orders. Again, what we're doing now is just searching for freight orders. This, for those of you who have used SRM or are familiar with it, this looks quite a lot like what SRM looks like when we're searching for a shopping cart. So basically, as you can see, you can also just write or type in your freight order number here in this box. Click on apply at the bottom, and eventually it will return the same result as what we did before. But as you can see, there's tons of other fields that we can fill in. Matchboxes to expand our search. We can even have the multiple selection, calendar dates for pickup date, delivery date. So there's other ways that we can search for a freight order or a number of freight orders at once. Let's say that we have we have added a freight order number or a document type number at the field here for document type. We've clicked on apply, and our results would display at the bottom, as we can see here. So these are what the results would look like once we've clicked on apply. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a search based on our inbound delivery number, the one that was generated, and eventually, like Leandro was explaining before, that inbound delivery number is directly linked to your PO number for goods, which is also directly linked to what we call in TM a DTR document and also a freight unit. So there are 4, let's say, documents that are kind of linked together in TM, and we'll get to that in 1 second as well. So let me just go all the way up before I perform a search and show you how I can even expand these search fields even further. So if this looks like there's quite enough fields for you to search by, if you look carefully, and that of course would be in your own time when you get a chance to access the system, there's not a field for inbound delivery number or PO. To get to that field, we would have to click on change query here, and that will take us to another screen which now adds a certain number of search fields. We have our general data section, we have our document references section, as we can see here, driver, resources, equipment, and if we just keep scrolling down, we have a number of other search boxes. But what I'm interested in is all the way at the end, we have a section for UN-owned equipment, and we see here the search boxes for goods PO and ECC inbound delivery. So first of all, what we have to make sure of is that there are no other details in any other search boxes, because it could limit the results that we're getting when we click on apply. Now, I know that I don't have any other details, and let me see if this is the inbound delivery number that I want to search for, and it is. So I would simply click on apply, and that should return a number of results, as we can see here. So see, we're back in the initial screen we were looking at before, and at the bottom now I should have the results that are linked. All these here are linked, all the ones that I'm selecting. All these freight orders are linked to that inbound delivery number. Now we can see that these also have document types that are different. There's 2 and 2, and we'll learn in a bit that these document types define if these freight orders are for a DAP or ex-work scenario, if they're assigned to a vendor, if they're assigned to a freight forwarder. So basically we can see here that for this particular case we have 2 freight orders that have 1 document type and 2 that have another. So in this case I'm sure we're dealing with an FCA Incoterm scenario where the vendor is assigned 2 freight orders and the freight forwarder now would be assigned, or we have to plan for 2 more freight orders. Now the results page can also be, let's say, edited, so you can work around and see how to manage the results in a way that is more understandable to you. So maybe you don't like to have your document here to the left or your document type here. Some of the useful information is not there available to you. Maybe you don't care about the carrier description at this point, but you want to reference or cross-reference the source location address. So you can manually just drag some of these columns, as I'm doing here, very similar to what we do in ECC, and now our source location address is there. If we scroll to the right, we see that we have a number of other columns with important information like destination locations, total distance, and if we keep moving on, this continues, even the means of transport, vehicle resource, the life cycle status, and we'll see what that stands for later on in our WebEx session. We will see as well that if we scroll almost all the way to the right, we have our goods PO, forwarding order or DTR number, in this case DTR number, and ECC inbound delivery. So maybe if we had a number of results, what we're interested in having is these 3 document columns all the way to the left, or at least connected to this freight order number that we have here. So we can do that quickly, and then we'll access our freight order. So let's say I go and click right here on Open Settings Dialog, and this is also again very similar to what SRM looks like. We'll have 2 columns, one for hidden columns, so you see there's still a large amount of columns and data that we have not seen, and displayed columns to our right. All we would have to do if we want to move columns around is search for those that are related to the inbound delivery number and the PO for goods, so we have them all here. And we could simply select them. If you click on Control, you could always just jump from one to another, and now you select the ones that you want and move them up, either one item up or all the way to the top. Okay, in this case I'm moving them all the way to the top, and now I know that in my displayed columns I'm going to have goods PO, forwarding order, DTR, ECC inbound delivery, and my actual document. If you want to add something from the hidden columns, process is similar. You would just select one from the hidden columns and add it to the displayed columns. But let's say this is enough for me right now, and I would click on OK, and we can see now that our results page has changed a bit if I scroll to the left, and I should have all the documents that I'm interested, all one next to the other. So we can link them together. So now we know for sure that these freight orders are all linked to the same inbound delivery, same DTR, and same goods PO. So that's what where I'll leave it in terms of searching for freight orders. I think that's enough information for you guys to become familiar with how to search for your freight order. So remember, you could either do it directly by clicking the number in Display Freight Order, or you can search by PO or inbound delivery number. If you want to access a particular freight order, you can do so directly from here. As you can see, each one of these is a hyperlink, so you can just click on any of them. I'm just going to click on the first one just to display it, and I'll click on that one, and you see a new window will display, and this should be the window for my freight order, and here it is, display UNOE planned freight order. And now, as I was saying before, the details at the top in the header are very important. Right from these details, I can tell that this is the freight order for my freight forwarder, the one that is linked to a freight forwarder, not to the vendor. So now we know just from this information what we're looking at. Now let's go to one of the key tabs here. As you can see at the top, we have options to either save, cancel, edit, refresh, and many other options that right now may not be interesting for our WebEx. So I'm just going to focus on what is. Let's go below and see that we have a number of tabs that we can navigate through, as Leandro was showing in the PowerPoint, but I know it's always very useful to have them in the system. And if you see this folder all the way at the end and click on it, you have another list. You see the last one we had on screen was statuses, but we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 more tabs that are not visible initially. You can access them directly from here, for example, output management. And we see that now the tabs have changed at the top as well. So there's quite a number of tabs that we can take a look at. Now, let's go to the one I mentioned first, which is document flow. And this document flow tab is important in a sense because it gives us an idea of all the documents that are linked to our freight order. So any document that we're viewing will lead the pack. In this case here, we see that we have our freight order at the top, and this one is linked to a freight unit, which is linked to a DTR number, which is linked to the inbound delivery number. All these generated automatically by the system. If you look to the left, you have the description of the document we're looking at. So we know that this is the freight order. We know that this is the freight unit, the DTR, and the inbound delivery number. So we can take a look also at other information that we have here in this document flow tab, but generally the most important thing about this tab is to see what documents are linked to the one we're looking at now. So before we even start clicking around and seeing how these other hyperlinks work, we're going to take a look at some of the tabs that also Leandro was showing in the PowerPoint before we actually start going into and submitting events, adding notes, and adding attachments. So our document flow is one of the important ones. We'll quickly go through some other ones here, like for example, general data, just so you get a good look or a brief look at the information. General data, well, is exactly that, general data from the freight order. It describes general information like document type, means of transportation, the carrier, total distance, the resource capacity, organizational data. Even at the bottom, it tells us the source location of this particular freight order. So in this case, the source location is Durban Port and destination Mombasa Port. So this information is all linked here at the top under general data. We also have business partner, which is also quite an important tab to look at, basically because it'll show you that basic information, mainly the shipper, consignee, which stands for the mission that it's going to as a final destination, the shipper in this case being Nissan, and the carrier that is assigned to this particular freight order as well. So this particular leg is assigned to Kuhn and Nagel. So we can see that information here limited to this particular freight order. Now we'll see how we can view the bigger picture and see all the freight orders in different legs later on, but let's continue taking a look at the tabs that are important here for us. We can also see the items tab, which displays the items inside of this freight order. The stages, in this case, will only have one stage because remember, this is only displaying one freight order. So this is the one that is going from Durban Port to Mombasa Port, as we saw before. And now we're going to jump in directly into what we want you to focus on in this WebEx before it gets any later. It'll be these three here: execution, notes, and attachments. So let's take a look at the execution tab first, just to get an idea of what we see here. The execution tab basically shows you the events that are supposed to be submitted in TM. In this case, the events that you would be having to submit. Now, if we take a look at this, we see that we have a number of events that are already defaulted by the system based on the particular leg that has been assigned to this freight order. So we see that there's a handover document, loading begin, loading end, departure, and so on. There's no more here. In a sense, these would be the total events that we would need to start submitting. So let's say that we're logging into this transportation management module, and we can see if the vendor or freight forwarder have submitted events. This is where we would be able to see them, the execution tab. In this case, no one has submitted any events because we see that all the statuses here are still pending. They're in yellow. So in this case, nothing has occurred yet so far. We also see that we have an execution tab and a notes tab. The execution tab is basically to add the details for the events. We'll see that in a bit. And the notes to add notes to some of these events. So basically we're going through this quickly, and then we're going to do this step by step. So remember, execution, where we'll see the events to submit. And all the events we see here are those that are considered expected. If we want to add any unexpected events, they'll not be visible here. Notes tab will show us the notes that we have either added to TM to have a conversation with the other system, which is CCP, the freight forwarders or the vendors, and vice versa. If they add any notes in that system, we would see them here as well. And then we have the attachment tab, where we would attach or view any attachments that the freight forwarder or vendor have either added to some of the events. Simply by dragging and dropping, or by clicking on insert and adding a file. So we're going to be doing that now one step at a time. So basically that's just to get an idea of the tabs that are quite important for you. And now that we're going to go into a freight order and start submitting events and seeing how that impacts CCP and how the CCP can impact TM, now you're a little more familiar with some of these tabs that are important for you. So remember, we can simply close this window, or we can navigate to document flow, and let's click on our freight unit. So we can now, by clicking on our freight unit, let's see how the view changes. Okay, we have more of a generic view of everything we're about to do in this WebEx now for submitting events. So let me get a click on the freight unit. That'll load a new window. So remember, always pay attention to the amount of windows you have open. As you can see in the back, I still have my freight order. In the front here, I have my freight unit. So let's maximize that screen so we only see one thing. And now we realize that we have our freight unit and all the other documents linked to it. And so you see now we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 freight orders all linked to this one freight unit. And now we'll see why it's important to access this document first. To have a generic view of the whole process. We have at the left again the description, so we see the freight order vendor. So we know these two first ones are the ones that will be managed by the vendor, and the two bottom ones are managed by the freight forwarder. And let's start clicking on some of these freight orders to view if some events have been submitted, so we can see what that looks like. But before I do that, since I have a number of things here that I want to take a look at first, I'm going to open one of the freight orders assigned to a vendor first and see if there are any events that have been submitted, so we can take a look at what that looks like, because before we just had a chance to see the ones that were not submitted yet. So we could always just navigate here by clicking again on one of the hyperlinks, and we're seeing that for this particular freight order, if I want to see if any of the events have been submitted, I would go to execution. And now we'll see how the result in this screen is very different from what we saw before. Before we saw that we had all yellow triangles here, and now we have green squares, which say that these events have all been reported. So let's say our vendor has been submitting events in CCP. All I would do when I log into TM and search for my freight order number is go to the execution tab and view that the actual events have been submitted. As we can see here, all except for one, which is the clear customs event. And we'll see why. Maybe I was waiting for something. Maybe we were waiting for documents that were pending, and of course we couldn't submit the event until these documents were sent to us. So how would I see if these documents are sent to us, or how would I see if there's any warning message telling me if there's something pending or if something has been done? I would simply go to the Notes tab and view in the Notes tab if anything is new or if anything has been added here. So we have two notes. One standard text type here, in language English, as we've seen before. The internal text has not been checked, which means that these messages can be viewed by myself and also the vendor. And we see that we have here, please remember to submit the clear customs event together with the corresponding documentation. So that must have been a note that I have added for the vendor to submit this clear customs event, or at least the corresponding documentation. I receive an answer saying, well noted, but I realize that the event has not been submitted, so I will submit it myself. To make sure that the attachment that I need, the clear customs, is actually here, I could go to the attachments and check and see. If you realize now the attachments, we have bill of lading, internal email, and proof of delivery. So in this case, I don't have the attachment itself, but maybe the vendor has simply either sent that by email, or there's a way that I can have this document in my power. So remember, as Leandro was showing, and I can switch to this, I took a screenshot before when Leandro was presenting. In this case, we would be looking at the goods vendor stage, but remember, the TM Planner can also update events and upload attachments. Okay, so these are quite important on behalf of the goods vendor. So if by any chance this is the last step that is missing, I could just do that myself. So how would I add an attachment or submit an event or even add a note? We're going to take a look at that first. We'll do the clear customs submission of event for the vendor. We'll go to execution. We simply select this line that we have now. And we could, of course, if you realize the buttons are grayed out, we just click on Edit, and we click on Report Event. If we click on Insert Event, we're eventually inserting an unexpected event. So remember that anything that is here is expected. Insert will create an unexpected event. So let's just click on Report Event, and we have here our reported and submitted event. We see Event Clear Customs Reported. At the top, also realize that if you do it like that, you simply have your actual event date will be the one that you're performing the action at the time. So right now it's 4:13, of course, in the time zone for the actual location. And the date is the date that I'm submitting the action for. You could always change that if you just selecting this line, going to the execution tab and clicking on the calendar here. We could always make a change to this actual event date and say, you know what, this actually happened yesterday, and and it happened at 9 a.m. We could always do that as well. And we could just click on enter, and that would switch the actual event date and actual time as well. We can even add a note by clicking on insert, and this note will be strictly linked to this event as we've seen. But we're going to look into those in a little more. So I just want to submit this event for Clear Customs in Nissan. And later on, maybe we can work on adding an attachment and showing you that when I access the ones for Kuhn and Nagel. So I just wanted to show you basically how to complete. This was the last event for the vendor. They did not submit the last event, so I just submitted this for them in TM. And we just have to save the event that I've submitted. Okay, well, the text type is missing, so I don't want to add any text type. So I'll just make sure that that is done. And data saved successfully. So for this particular freight order, link to the vendor, the submission of event, the last one is done. So I could always just close this and see that that has been submitted. So in a sense, and Leandro, do we want to show how that looks in CCP, or should we go first and complete the one for the freight forwarder?
I think maybe we can stop now and let's have a look at the goods vendor freight order, and let's try to connect to CCP to see if that was reflected into CCP. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to make you the presenter now. So before that, I think there's a quick question here. Let's check and see. I haven't seen the questions in a bit. There was no questions while I was presenting, I suppose, right? We have a question from Titayal. Good evening. Is packing list included? If so, then do the vendor provide container-wise packing list, as it would help in the inbound coordinate and tracking? Do all the items in shopping cart are viewable in general data? We could have offline discuss, as we have done offline web-based tracking tool for EAC project. Okay, so just a quick answer to all the items in the shopping cart are viewable in general data. They are. The ones that are assigned to this particular freight order would be visible. Under the freight unit, you could always view the items that are in the shopping cart that are supposed to be managed. So now we're only looking at a freight order, but in this case, as you see on screen, we have the freight unit. So we could view, if we go to items or general data, I believe. And in this case, you can see the items at the bottom because we've managed to change the display so we could view the items at the bottom here too. We'll show you that in a bit. So yes, and eventually for a quick answer to that, you can see that. But of course, I would always recommend either being in the DTR document or the freight unit to view those. And then we see, is packing list included? If so, then do the vendor provide container-wise packing list, as it would help in the inbound coordinate tracking? Okay, is the packing list included? I believe Leandro.
Yeah. So remember that packing information, how the different items are packed, that should be I mean, it's not automatically done. It's not coming from the manufacturer. Maybe manufacturer can add an attachment to indicate how the different items are packed, but in the end, we will have to replicate that packing information to reflect weights and volumes by using the packing functionality in the inbound delivery. But remember that for phase one, the one starting next Monday, we are only talking about vehicles. Okay, so UNOE, we are only be managing vehicles using this process. So all other commodities that are purchased by UN will not come into the transportation management module. Okay, so all the other type of equipment like IT equipment and all the other ones will not be using or will not come to the transportation management module. Only vehicles and then COE and troops. Okay, so maybe also we can, if we go to the freight unit, we can also show to them the stages tab and maybe the map, just to because we need to differentiate between freight order, right? We said while we were doing the presentation, we said that the freight order, it's the specific leg, but then if you want to understand the different legs of the shipment, you need to go to the freight unit document in which you have the different parts of the shipment. So maybe we can show to them in the freight unit document stages and the map, maybe.
Okay, thanks, Leandro. So definitely we'll do that quickly. So right now, just so you know, I'm at the freight unit level. We see it here in the header. And what we're going to look at is the Stages tab. So again, just for a quick reference, let me get the participants out of the way so you can see that in the screen. And if we select the folder and click on Stages, we now have, and as Leandro is mentioning, we now have the full view of all the stages. So you see here we have in the document for the vendor freight order, the other vendor freight order, and the other two freight orders for the freight forwarders. We see that we have stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in total, there's 4 different stages. Even the means of transportation for each stage, road, sea, and road. Even the status, unloaded, unloaded, and not loaded. So we can see the difference between these two are pretty much completed, while these others haven't even started in terms of event submission. We also have the dates, as we can see here, the departure date. for each one of these legs, the source location for each one of these legs. So we see that the first one is from our source location, which is the not the destination location here, Yokohama Port, but the source is all the way here. We see city source, Yokohama, Kanagawa. Then we have the destination location, and the same thing goes for each and every other freight order. Yokohama Port source, Durban Port destination, Durban Port source, Mombasa destination, Mombasa Port, finally to our mission. So each one of the legs is here under our freight unit. So we see every single freight order here displayed under the Stages tab. Let's keep moving to the right. And we have some more details in terms of times, pickup dates, time zones, and so on, all linked, even the carriers for each one of these, the status information for these also, as we saw, unloaded and unloaded here as well as the green light, as there is no blocking or execution blocking either. So here we go. This is for the general view. I believe it's quite clear if we've understood what we were talking about in terms of freight orders. So freight orders represent each of the legs. In the freight unit, we can see all these legs together, sources and destinations. And then also Leandro was mentioning that we should view the map. So there's a way to just click here on the tab here called Map, and now we can visualize these legs. So we'll be able to see now the map of what we're talking about here before. Maybe I could even remove the item so we have a bigger view of this map. So now we have a visual of our legs in terms of each one of the legs. We have our first source destination to our next source destination, then again the portion that is done by sea, and all our destinations before we get to our final destination here in the mission, which is on Miss Juba. So if you realize, every time I hover over any of these map points, we can see the information related to the location, and I can't move the mouse once I'm there. The description in terms of who's the vendor associated to this specific freight order or leg, if I could see that once again, and the address exactly, and even the freight unit assigned to it. If we move over to any other location in the map, we can see now the location, Durban Port, we can see the address, and also again the freight unit and the start of freight unit here as well. So this is a good visual to understand what we're talking about. So each one of these would be a freight order, what we understand as a freight order or a leg. And these can be visible under the freight unit because it combines all these freight orders in one view. Okay, so basically that's the stages part we wanted to cover, and also the map itself. Now I realize I did not submit any notes or any attachments while I was showing that there, but when Leandro goes into CCP, I'm going to be doing it at the same time. So when he refreshes CCP, he can see any notes or any attachments that I may have added for this particular freight order for the assigned to the vendor. So we're not going to waste any more time there, and I'm just going to switch the presentation to Leandro.
So thank you very much, Brian. So before we move and we start showing the part for external vendors, we have some questions in the chat. We have one regarding which POs for vehicles will be going to this TM module. Okay, so there will be no migration of the existing POs, but all of the POs raised starting from Monday onwards will go into TM. Okay, so it will be basically the integration will be on starting from Monday, meaning that all the new POs will go into the new module. Okay, and then we also had a question in the Q&A section. Let me read it again regarding the submission of the events. So the question is if the statement of work for freight forwarders will include as mandatory that freight forwarders will have to submit events. That one, I'm not aware of. I'm not aware of that quote in the statement of work, but we can confirm that one. But for sure, there has been a communication sent from procurement division to all external partners about the implementation of the new system, and they have been granted with access, okay, to the system. And I think you already seen my screen, right? So this is how it looks like, the login page for external partners. So the same system will be used by goods vendor and freight forwarders to submit events and so on. And also some training materials will be available for external partners to know how to submit events, notes, and attachments. Okay, but I'm not aware about the if the statement of work will include that part for freight forwarders. Okay. All right. Then we have just a question from Tita Yal about the map, if it's a live one. So it's not it doesn't tell you where the shipment is right now. I mean, it's not like you can see if it's at the middle of a leg, but it will only show to you the different legs and then the status of each leg, if it's in execution, if the execution hasn't started or not. But you will not see there the particular shipment in the middle of the ocean, for example. Okay, so it will be basically indicating the legs and the status of each leg that in the system is called freight order. Okay, so let me use the credentials and log in CCP to see what's the view for let's say for our goods vendor that was in our example Nissan. Okay, so I'm going to be logging in CCP as Nissan. Okay, let's 1 second. All right. Okay. One second. All right. Okay. So I just logged in as, in this case, the screens for both goods vendor and freight forwarders are going to be very similar. So once they log in, they will see how many freight orders are open, so are available for the external partner to submit events, notes, and attachments. So for Nissan, they have 65 freight orders that are open, and in the case of a goods vendor, what the information that they will have in order, because if they have 65, they could use this screen to filter out and search the related freight order. But basically, the information that they will have, it's the goods PO, right? So they can use the search button to look for the freight orders related to a goods PO. Okay, so they can type here the related goods PO and hit on enter to look for the related freight orders. So I just click on the search, and the system filter out the list of 65 freight orders and showing only the 2 that, if we scroll to the right, we will see that these are the 2 having goods PO, the one I just typed in the search button. Okay, so this list will indicate the different freight orders that are related to that goods PO, and if I'm not mistaken, the one that Brian submitted an event was the second one, right? The one from Yokohama to Mombasa port. So the first leg that is responsibility of the of Nissan, is from the factory up to Yokohama port, and the second leg is from Yokohama port to Durban port. So Durban port is the handover location where Nissan will hand over the vehicles to the freight forwarder. So that's the destination. It's the handover location for Nissan, because in this case we are talking about FCA scenario. Okay, so let me open the second freight order just by clicking on the freight order number. So this is the one that Brian submitted the last event before. Okay, so we have on the first part. So the view, it's a little bit different compared to what we saw in TM, but in here from loading begin to document complete, those are the events at source at Yokohama port. And then if we scroll to the bottom, we will see all the events at destination. Okay, so we can see all the events at Durban. So if we scroll to the bottom, we will see the events that are related to Durban location, and this is the one, the clear customs was the event that Brian submitted in TM, and we can see it even with the date reported by Brian, the 16th of January. That's the date and time that was submitted by Brian in TM. Okay. What else we can see in this screen? If we scroll to the bottom, we can see the attachments. So we can see bill of lading and proof of delivery. If you remember well, there were 3 attachments in TM, but only 2 of them were marked as external. There was one that was internal, and that's why we can only see 2 in CCP, because one of them was an internal email and was flagged as internal, making it not visible in CCP. Sorry. And on the left part, we can see the notes. So this area, the notes area, it's the 2 notes that we could also see. The ones on the top are the most recent. Okay, so in here we have the first one requesting the manufacturer to submit the clear customs, and then they will note it answer from the manufacturer, and we can see the business partner information, the freight order details, and so on. Okay, so in here we can use that screen to review the different actions. So Brian, events are all uploaded, but maybe I will send you a note so you can see it there. Okay, so I would say thank you for submitting the event, attached the related docs. Okay, related docs. Okay, so I'm going to add that note to make it visible in TM, and I'm going to be, for example, adding, maybe there was one document that was missing. So I'm going to use the browse button to find, for example, the in my computer to find, for example, the clear customs document. So I will open it and upload it. Okay. And that will be the way to submit attachments and notes. So all the events were reported, and maybe we can talk more about the events afterwards when we see one example for the freight forwarder. Okay, so that will be view of the CCP as goods vendor, and we will later on see the same one for the freight forwarders.
All right, thanks, Leandro. And actually, while you were showing them the screen, if you realize, I have also added myself an attachment for Clear Customs. Now you have 2 there. And the note as well. I added attachment received for clear customs. Event is submitted and attachment added. Just so that you could see, as Leandro was showing you the system, I was submitting actions and events in TM, so you would see live how that is represented in one and the other. And now, since we're going to go back to TM, you will be able to see that whatever Leandro has added will now show in TM as well. Okay, so it's always a good idea to either refresh the page before, just in case the events have already been submitted, just to make sure that you're not duplicating the work as well. And I think there's a question too before we move on.
Okay, so yeah, regarding the notifications, I think we didn't mention, right, the notifications part. So because we have a question regarding email notifications, if you're going to be receiving any kind of email notifications. So let me go back to my presentation, because we had a slide on notifications, okay, that we didn't show to you. It was hidden, but now that you asked about notifications, maybe we can talk a little bit more about email notifications. So which email notifications are automatically triggered in the system? Basically, for you as MoveCon, you are notified when some planned events like the handover document event, documentation sent, and documentation complete. When any of these three events are overdue, then there will be an automatic email sent to MoveCon, okay, but only in the case for overdue. Then RNI, so the receiving user in the missions, will be notified whenever these three planned events are submitted. So when there is a handover document, documentation sent, and documentation complete, the RNI contact in the mission will receive an email notification. Okay, so always the RNI contact person in the missions will receive an email notification in that case. And then for unexpected events that we didn't cover in detail yet, I think maybe later on we can see the different unexpected events that we can submit. For unexpected events, planners, requisitioners, and RNI will be sent an email notification. So examples of unexpected events would be delays, damages, or a loss, or so on. Okay, so that would be basically the email notifications that have been built into the system. So for the RNI in the missions, for the receiving users, all unexpected events are reported, and then handover documents and documentation sent events are also notified. Okay. So maybe, Brian, we can go back to TM and show to them. Let me put you as a presenter. 1 second. Participants. Okay, I'm changing the role for you to be the presenter.
Okay. All right, now for a second the screen froze. Okay, so let me just share my desktop again. So now we're back into TM, and I'm still in my freight unit, as we saw. So you realize now, as Leandro was explaining, the submission of events for both TM and CCP occur simultaneously. So while he was writing to me, I was writing to him at the same time. So now we can see that basically our first and second freight orders are complete and all the documents are received, especially the ones for the vendor. And then we have the freight forwarders, freight orders that have still yet to be submitted. So we're talking about the legs from Durban Port to Mombasa and Mombasa to the destination location in the mission itself. So we're going to select, of course, it makes more sense to select stage 3, which is the one right before last. And what we're going to be doing there is submitting events this time from this side, from TM. We're going to be submitting an expected event, an unexpected event, attaching a document, and also adding a note so you guys can see how this is done from here. And thanks for the explanation, Leandro, for the notifications. We weren't sure that was going to be something that would come up, then just in case we kept the slide in the PowerPoint itself. So again, remember to access the freight order, we simply click on any of the ones we want to access here on the freight unit. That'll load a new window. And now we see directly under execution. So usually it'll go back to the last tab you've been viewing. So in this case, execution for this freight order shows, of course, as we saw before, not a single action has been submitted, not a single event has been submitted. So these would be the events that we have to submit and are considered expected. So the first thing we do here is click on Edit. And if, let's say, the handover document process has gone according to plan and there's really nothing to notify, or even if there is, still we're submitting this event, we can simply, again, remember, report the event just by clicking on the button Report Event, and that'll show, change our yellow triangle to a green square saying that the event has been reported. But again, remember, the actual date and time are right now, right, the moment of submission. So we could always just make the change either here at the top or at the bottom under execution. We can also make the change here. So whatever it is that we change, now we say it's the 14th instead, and we'll just keep the time for time's sake. I know we only have 20 minutes left of the WebEx session. We see that the actual date has changed here for the location and description. We can even add an event reason in this case if we want to, or even add a note to this event. Now, if I go to the notes now, before I save, you see we have an option here to insert a note. So for this specific event, I'm going to add a text type first, which really in the training environment, we only have one option. If we have more than that once we're in production, I'm not 100% sure of. So I'm going to select this text type, which will allow me to add text. In this case, if you look here, the language, we can have a choice of languages to choose from here. I'm just going to select English. The internal text is automatically selected once I select the text type TMTOR execution. So basically, in this case, this note is only going to be visible by the person who has logged into TM, in this case the inbound coordinator with the role to submit events, and we can add event submission or any other text that we would want to add to this specific event, or nothing to report. Can add that as well here. We click on enter, make sure that what we added there is okay, and now we can click on save. And we see that the data has been saved successfully. So for this event, we now have a note that we added, and it says who created the note and when this note was created. If we need to add any information here, let's say 2 different people are submitting events, we can read the notes that one has left the other. If we want to delete it, we just simply select the line, click on the bin, and we delete this note as well. Okay, so this note will not be visible in CCP because, again, the note is now only selected as internal text. So this note will not be visible. If we want to add a note to that specific event, we would have to do it under the tab here for notes. Now we already learned how to submit an expected event. Now let's submit an unexpected event, maybe for loading begin. Okay, so let's say that for loading begin, I'm submitting this event because it occurred. So I'm just going to report this one now. The loading has begun on the January 17th, and that's fine. But I want to add an unexpected event, maybe linked to this loading begin event. So here in this case, we would click on Insert Event. And when we click on Insert, you see a new line has appeared where we have a different icon saying Unexpected Event. The type of event has a drop-down menu now that we can select quite a number of unexpected events. There's a list of determined unexpected events that we should choose from. So in a sense, once we go into production, the amount of options should be reduced to only those unexpected events, which could be things like damage or delay. Because if we select something like loading begin, it'll still allow me to select that, but it'll show two loading begins, one for unexpected and one for expected event. Now, in this case, I would select what is expected to be an unexpected event, and sorry about the game of words there, and add here delay. And now we can always say where this delay occurred, in what location. So we're still talking about Durban port as we're making reference to this loading location. So we select Durban port. Now remember, you can edit from either this line or you can do so down here. It's like, for example, here we can add an event reason for this delay. So we could say delay in loading due to missing documentation. For example, we could add that note either here in the event reason, or we can add it in the note later on. So we can click on enter just to make sure that what we've written there stays, and maybe add the same note, insert, and do the same thing here as well. So this time I'm not going to add the text type, and I'm just going to leave it as is. Delay due to lack of documentation. Click on enter, and now I'm going to save this event like this. Okay, so right away what has happened here is we have our line at the top. The icon is there. We don't seem to have a note, I guess, because in this case, let me go back here and save it, and then maybe add the note post that. Okay, so now this plan date has been stated here, and now maybe we can add the note later on. But just make sure, be careful, because you see the system keeps jumping from event to event. So let's select the delay and see that here our note was actually there. Okay, so sometimes the system will just jump to another line, so always make sure you're viewing the correct event. Okay, so remember, expected events are here with the green square. Reported event for expected. Unexpected will always show up with a different icon. You want to add a note or some information, we can add some here on the execution and note tabs. Okay, so I believe that should be enough in terms of submitting events to at least see how that will have a repercussion in CCP. What I'll do now is go to the Notes tab and show you guys how to add a note. So quickly under the Notes tab, this is quite simple. We simply have to insert. Again, select the type of text. In this case, what are we adding? What type of information we're adding? Maybe we can add loading instructions. Now again, I'm not a pro in this sense. I don't know exactly what would happen in reality, what types of notes you would be adding. So again, forgive me if what I'm adding in the content or the notes doesn't make that much sense to you. I'm just trying to show you how to add notes to this system in TM. Again, you select your language, and here we would also select under the internal text if this is going to be only visible by me or any other inbound coordinator with the role, or if I want to have this visible in CCP. So in this case, I'm not adding anything under internal text. I'm not checking this box, and I could add information like, for example, missing documentation, which caused delay. Okay, and there we can add this information and click on save. That will also be saved and will also be visible once Leandro logs into CCP as a freight forwarder. So there you go. We have now a note that should be visible as well. We can also delete it by clicking on the delete button. One thing now that I'm thinking about the delete, just quickly under execution, something that is important. Once you have already submitted an event and saved, you can't go back and delete it. Okay, you would have to just go back to one of the submitted events and maybe add a note and say disregard. Okay, if there's any mistake or make any changes into the notes or event reasons. You can't eliminate one of the events that you've submitted. Okay, and finally the attachment tab. We'll now learn how to submit attachments through TM. Leandro showed you in CCP, so I'm just going to quickly show you how to do so in TM. So basically, we can just drag and drop files in this big square that says drop files here, or we can insert as well a folder, a file, or a URL. In this case, we'll add a file, which will prompt a new window that says attachment. We can still make changes to this type of attachment and say if it's an attachment, legal document, link, or rate table. We'll just keep it as attachment for now. We'll add a description here. We'll add, for example, loading document. Again, forgive me for the text that I'm adding here. I just want to show you how to add the attachments themselves. The only attachment I have in the PDF, I think, is a clear customs PDF. So anyway, to add the description here, I'll click on next, and now the system will allow me to browse my computer, and I should be able to add any attachments that I have. So of course, since I've been playing around before, we have it here. So maybe we can do the proof of delivery in this case, or internal email, whatever it is, document that you have in PDF shall be loaded here. I know also the text file can be uploaded here. I'm not sure what the limitations are in terms of files, but mainly it should be Word documents, PDFs, and text files. I think maybe even Excels. Okay, so we have our file here. We click on OK, and basically that's it. We have our file loaded. Now, very important, visibility type. We have to select either internal or external. So if I want Leandro to see it, I will select external. And we can still change the attachment type and say maybe if it's a legal document or not. And to the right, simply a document type definition, which is a PDF. So we would be done now by clicking on Save. We would have already submitted events. We would have added notes and added attachments for this particular freight order ending in 552. So now that Leandro will take over and log into CCP, we should be able to see all these attachments, notes, and submission of events by the freight forwarder Kuehne + Nagel. Okay, so I'm going to just switch now and give the presentation back to you.
So thank you very much, Brian. Let me start and share my screen. Okay, and we are going to be having a look at the view for the freight forwarders, right? So as Brian was mentioning, I'm going to be logging in as, in this case, as Kuehne + Nagel, and Kuehne + Nagel will have those freight orders visible because remember that Kuehne + Nagel was awarded with that shipment, and the Kuehne + Nagel business partner was used and mapped to the freight order, so that when logging in CCP, they are able to see that freight order. Okay, so in that case, Kuehne + Nagel will see as the same thing we said for Nissan. They will see in here the number of freight orders that are in open status, meaning that we can still submit events and attachments. And the same thing we said for Nissan, that the document that they will have available will be the goods PO. In the case of freight forwarders, usually they will be using the freight PO in order to find all the related freight orders. So if we scroll to the right, the field we mentioned before for Nissan was the goods PO. Okay, so in here you can see the one we used before, the goods PO. Freight forwarders will be basically using the freight PO. So once they are awarded with a shipment, they receive the freight PO with the details of the shipment, and they can use that freight PO in order to filter out all the related freight orders. So I'm going to be typing in the freight order, the freight PO, sorry, and by typing in the freight PO number, the system will filter out and show to me only the related freight orders. So the one that Brian has been working on in TM is the one corresponding to the first leg, right, from from Durban to Mombasa. So the location, let me go to the right and see. So the source should be Durban, and the destination should be Mombasa. So if I'm not mistaken, is the one appearing second, the one ending with 552. So this is the one that you can see that the loading begin event is not the next one. So because the loading begin was the event that was submitted by Brian. So loading begin is the first event, the first planned event normally for freight orders, and that's not the case for that freight order because it was already submitted. So I can just click on the freight order number to see the different events. So I can see that these two events have been submitted already with the reported dates and times. I can see on the left the note that Brian included in the freight order, and also if I scroll down, I can see the attachment. So in here, as tour events, we can see the unexpected. So this, remember, this delay event that was submitted by Brian as unexpected appear in tour events. So if you go to the tour events, or the external partners will be able to see the unexpected events in the tours section. And attachments, this is the proof of delivery that was uploaded by Brian in TM, and by flagging it as external, it will also be visible in CCP for external partners. Okay, so I think for manufacturers we already submitted notes and attachments. So let's see how in CCP external partners will be able to submit events. So they will be able to submit events. For example, let's say that we want to submit the loading end in the source location. So I will put the date here. I will select the date. Let's say today, and the loading begins started at 4:44. So let's say that it finished 2 hours later. So we can indicate, for example, 6:45 p.m. Okay, and I'm going to report that event. So I will click on Update Events to report it. Okay. So what I'm doing now as an external partner is to report the loading end. Okay, so the loading begin, we reported it from TM, and I just did this next event, I reported it from CCP. So the same thing will apply for all the planned events, for all the ones existing in the source and destination. And if I want to add an unexpected event, I can go to Tour Events and click on Add Event and select it from the drop-down menu. So for example, we already submitted delay from TM. Let's say that now we want to report on a damage. So this will be the unlucky shipment. Okay. And let's say that we could report that event. And let's put, for example, it happened at 4:50 p.m. Okay. And we can put a note saying that one of the vehicles was damaged. Okay. So those unexpected events can also be reported in this way, and you can see that they will be considered as unexpected. We can confirm that unexpected event, and they will appear here in the freight order. So sometimes there are refresh problems in the freight order. So you can see that it's not appearing here. Maybe it's even hidden. Yeah, there it is. So it was hidden in the screen. So it was a matter of only of making it bigger. So the damage screen is there, and So we showed how to submit expected, unexpected. I think we already did the notes and attachments. So maybe we can have a look at again in TM to see if those changes were reflected in TM. But I think that would be all I wanted to show to you in CCP for freight forwarders. So it's quite easy for them to submit events, those that are planned and unexpected. So anything we are missing here, Brian, or you want to show this freight order in the I mean, they also have available the cargo tab to see the items just for the reference. So no need to change anything here, but the different items being transported in that shipment in the cargo tab. But what we wanted to show to you is how external partners will be able to submit events, notes, and attachments.
Yeah, thank you, Leandro. And definitely, I think we've already shown the back and forth enough. It's the end of the WebEx. We could go back to TM and see what you've just added, how it's reflected in TM if we want to in the last minute or two. But maybe if Leandro wants to switch and make me the presenter, in that meantime, if anyone wants to add any comment or ask a question, now would be the time to do so as we're closing up. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen now as well. And please, if there are any questions, now would be the time to ask them. I'm just going to show once again how the actions that Leandro took as a freight forwarder would now affect my freight order ending by 552 in TM, right? So the one I was responsible for. I see that still looks the same as I had before, so I could just simply refresh. And there you go. We have our loading end that was added by Leandro, which is the freight forwarder. If there are any notes, in this case, no notes here in this specific event, but there may be notes added in my notes tab. So I could always see if we have anything here. I added my own notes here. I don't think you added a note, correct? Okay, but you did add an attachment. Yes. Okay, so in the attachments, I would be able to, let's see, by clicking on the refresh, to be able to see if I have any new attachments now.
No, I think, Brian, I only added the and the unexpected event, so no attachments, no notes. I'm a bad freight forwarder, sorry.
You just the minimum amount of work, right? I see. Okay. So definitely the execution has been there, submitted, and also damaged. No was the other one. Okay, so those two events are there. So I think it was clear as it could be, going back and forth from one user to another on how what is expected of you in terms of monitoring and submitting events in TM, as well as adding notes and attachments, searching for your freight orders, understanding what your role is going to be now in phase 1. Eventually, what happens in phase 2, we'll get back to you. We have enough time. We're also recording some video tutorials that we're going to be sending out as well after this WebEx session. Not exactly after, but maybe by the end of this week or next week, that will also go through these steps so you can share it with other inbound coordinators that may not have been able to make it to this WebEx. Again, remember, this WebEx is also being recorded, and I believe it's going to be a very useful tool in order to understand how the system works, even for someone who has just seen this for the first time. So if there are no questions, and Leandro, you have nothing to add?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning, because there were some questions about the recorded session. So yes, we will share the link to the recorded session. And we have one last question about TCC, PCC. I mean, the example that we showed was a UNOE scenario, okay? But remember that for COE and for troops, the way to submit events, notes, and attachments will be very similar. So the way to communicate with freight forwarders will be the same, no matter if they are transporting COE or UNOE. The events, for example, for troops will vary a little bit. So you have some events, for example, that relate to chalk arrival, flight departure, flight arrival. But the way to submit events, the way to follow up with the freight forwarders by using notes and uploading attachments will be the same. Okay, and the only thing that maybe we can add about troops contributing country is that freight forwarders will have access definitely to CCP, but member countries are not given access to CCP, so they will not be able to report any event on CCP because they are not being granted access to CCP, at least in this phase. And at this stage, we are not sure if anybody will be reporting. In the case of a LOA scenario, where the TCC is responsible for the transportation, at this stage, we are not sure if any event will be reported for that particular transportation in which the UN is not responsible for the shipment.
Okay, well, Leandro's having some trouble with the audio now, so basically I think there are no other questions. I'm just going to take one last look at the chat here, and okay, I don't think so. So thank you guys. If I'm missing any other question, please just reach out to us in an email. Maybe we can get back to you. But I believe we've seen enough. Thank you for participating in this WebEx. We'll be sending you some follow-up emails shortly. Thanks, Leandro.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to all for joining.